I'd like to start, first of all, by thanking all the organizers for the opportunity to share our story with you. Um, I'd also like to set the table with a brief history of what we've done over the past years. I was born in Mexico City, and then at age 18, I enrolled at the Culinary Institute of America in upstate New York. I stayed there until the year 2000 and went back to Mexico to open Puyol. Puyol started basically as a neighborhood restaurant that pretended nothing but just to be like a very solid and good restaurant. After a few years, we started getting good at it. Reviews starting to pour in, and then Puyol became one of, I would say, one of the most important contemporary restaurants in Mexico. That has given us the opportunity to expand our brand. In the year after 2010, we started an expansion of restaurants. First of them were Enos, which are very local coffee shops with Mexican breakfast, Mexican sandwiches that we call tortas. Then we opened Maíz de Mar in 2004. In 2014, and then we opened Cosme also at the end of this year, and that's the story we wanted to share with you. We wanted to share this story because in the past, most Mexican food outside of Mexico has been related especially to fast food and to versions that are oversimplified. This doesn't mean that it doesn't happen with other cuisines. I'm sure that if you talk to a Japanese chef after he goes to eat in most Japanese restaurants outside of Japan, he would probably say the same. And we understand this is part of the of how food travels. However, we wanted to change a little bit the story. I've always enjoyed retos. Like I've always enjoyed challenges that are big, and I think New York is one of those challenges for chefs. It's one of those places that is really complicated to open, really complicated to operate, and it has a very challenging environment. So we were challenged by that thought. Obviously, the fact that I went to school there obviously had also something to do with it as well. The dream started 2 years ago. I went to cook at some friend's restaurant. His name is Alex Tupac. He owns several Mexican restaurants in New York. He was kind enough to invite me to have to cook a dinner with him, and two young fellows. Both their names are Santiago's. Went to that dinner, and they asked me that they wanted to open a restaurant, a Mexican restaurant, with me. At the beginning, I didn't give him more attention. No, I've already gotten several offers to open in New York, and I thought it was just some guys saying we wanted to open a restaurant. And then a few months later, they showed up at Pujol with a business plan to open a contemporary Mexican restaurant, and we hit it off right away because they basically waited for me a couple of hours in the restaurant, and then when I started telling them what I wanted, they always said yes to almost anything that I said. So it was perfect, which is rare in business. To me, it was very important that I was part of the investment of the restaurant. I didn't want to just be a chef. I believe that when you put money into the game, then you take better care of your businesses. So I think that is one of the main components of the success of Cosme. If you have a really good chef that is a business partner, then that's probably a really good business decision. When we talked about the concept in the beginning, we knew that we wanted to do the Mexico that we relate to. I don't know how many of you have gone to Mexico, but I didn't grow up with mariachis and My house is not Rosa Mexicano. I don't relate to that Mexico. I know it exists. I know it's part of our history. I cherish it, but I don't feel identified with that. I feel more identified with a multicultural contemporary society that, yes, has an identity. We have a very clear identity, but not related to the folkloric. Um, and a lot of restaurants I think, have gone past that. If you go to an Italian restaurant, for example, in New York, in the last 20 years, you've seen the disappearance of the checkered red and white tablecloths, the bottles of Chianti, no, the guy with the gondola. That we got over that a few years ago. For some reason, in Mexican restaurants, it's hard to go past that. No, the lucha libre and no, all that paraphernalia, the llorona and the calaveras in the walls. So we wanted to change the conversation. We wanted to show something that was different, that we related to. So in that process, we also met the architect of Cosme. His name is Alonso de Garay. I'm going to start flipping through some pictures. I'm sorry if I can't see, so I'll just start flipping. Not me, but the pictures. So we hired Alonso, and we talked about this ideal of a restaurant that was very clean and modern. The name Cosme came from the Mercado de San Cosme. My grandfather used to take me there when I was a boy, and I've always wanted to name one of my kids Cosme, and my wife didn't let me. She said it was a dog's name, so I figured if I can name one of my kids Cosme, then I'll name one of my restaurants. So, and I always feel like the name. You never go to a restaurant because of the name, but it is important because if the word becomes if I put like a avocado, then there's always a relation to something else. With Cosme is a proper name, same as Pujol. So Pujol is a restaurant, Cosme is a restaurant. It's a name, and there's also when we saw like the meaning of it, it's a Greek name. No, it's like the cosmos, and no, Manhattan being a cosmopolitan city. It kind of made sense, and it was not your folkloric, normal name. No, that I'm not gonna go into names so I don't offend anyone. What are we looking? That's me. Yeah, 3 months after, huh? So we started doing the concept by thinking everything that we loved about restaurants and everything that we hated about restaurants. Coming from a fine dining background in Pujol, there's many things that I think are really wrong with fine dining. First of all, there's a lot of waste in the food. There's a lot of stupid decisions being made in fine dining restaurants just for the sake of aesthetics. So when you cut things into geometrical patterns that are not present in nature, it doesn't affect the flavor. I understand when you chop onions into small dices, they cook evenly, so that makes sense. But there were a lot of decisions that we made in Pujol that were based on showing off. We knew we didn't want to do that in Cosme. So the food in Cosme is very simple. It's driven by flavor. It's driven by logic. It's not driven by trends. It's not driven by what's cool. It's something that's a lot more honest. Same with the dining room. We wanted no part in fancy things. I think beauty is in the material of things, not in the shape. So we concentrated in the materials of the restaurant. The tables are made by a Mexican carpenter in California. They're oak, they're beautiful, one single piece. The chairs are a combination of Danish, German, and Mexican designers. Danish design and German design was very strong in Mexico in the 50s. There's a strong influence. If you see even like the the like the Cosme logotype, or I don't know, I forget the word for it. That type is the one that we have in the subway in Mexico, and it was designed by a by a New Yorker in the 50s for the Olympics. So there's these very subtle and small references going on in Cosme all the time that might take you to Mexico, but in a very subtle way. The restaurant has basically no decoration. The floor is cement, which we use a lot in Mexico. It's a material that we like. The walls are just gray. That is something that we like about Pujol. No, the idea that the only thing that matters in a restaurant is what you're eating and who you're eating with. So we focus a lot on that. The restaurant is focused on people. The lighting is made to make people look good and make food look good. That was the idea when we started doing the lights at the restaurant. And then it just became, I also wanted it to be a space that was fun to be at. A lot of the restaurants have only one scenario. When you go into a hotel, you have many opportunities to encounter the guest. In a restaurant, it's usually just one, so we wanted different spaces. We wanted people to move around a little bit into the restaurant by themselves. It's not that we make them move for dessert, but actually you can walk in. We have a big bar area where people can walk in, get a margarita, and then move into the restaurant. And then if they feel like it, maybe after dinner, they can move back into the bar and keep drinking. I think Mexican food is related to being happy and to party, maybe because of the acid level and the spice level. And we wanted to do that also in the restaurant. The playlist of the restaurant is made by Nancy Wang. She's used to be part of LCD Sound System, and we've also worked a lot with her so that the whole ambience feels very Mexican. There's festive and happy. I think if you think about the attributes of Mexico, I think those are one of the first things that I think. It's like, let's go party, and we wanted that in the restaurant. Like I said, with the food, one of the first things that we knew we needed to have was a very strong tortilla program. Tacos are a way of life. Tacos are not a dish. So you make your own tacos. You don't need a plated taco to eat a taco. You don't need to put it on top of a tortilla. You can, like if you're at home and you're having rice, you can have tortillas and you make yourself a taco de arroz, or you can make also like a taco with foie gras. You can make a taco of anything. So the tortillas was the backbone of our culinary program. We were very fortunate to be in a conference with Dan Barber at Blue Hill a few years ago, and I met there Jorge Gaviria, this wonderful guy from Cuban descendants that was very interested in corn. And when we talked about how we saw corn, we also matched. So we started bringing heirloom corn from Mexico to the U.S. We're working between 4 and 6 different varieties, and we envision corn a little bit as coffee. So single origin corn made by a producer, and you know where your tortillas come from. So if you have bolita or you have cónico and you know the name of the producer, and when you go to Cosme, the waiter will tell you today's tortillas are from this producer and this varietal of corn, because it's kind of like the same as in wine, right? You don't say like I want white wine. No, you want Sauvignon Blanc, you want Chardonnay. It's the same with corn. There's at least 50 varieties that we're working with, and we've chosen the ones that we like the most. And also in one day in Cosme, you might get different tortillas too. So you might get like half through service, we run out of one corn, and then we start with the next batch. We bought doing tortillas outside of Mexico it's really Hard, first of all, because it's hard to get the corn. Uh, like here for example, in Great Britain, I don't know if you have access to that corn. Like any other product that has terroir involved, we've tried to make tortillas with corn from varieties that are made to make tortillas from the US, and the corn doesn't taste the same. It happens the same with almost everything. Like limes taste so different here. I remember I once went to cook in China, and we were cooking with cilantro, and it tasted so different. No, it was like it looked like cilantro, it smelled like cilantro, but taste. It didn't taste like the cilantro I knew. That doesn't mean that it's wrong or bad. It's just different. So to us, the corn was very important. We have a mill that was built specially for us. That was one of the other challenges. The mills in Mexico are made with cast iron. In the U.S., the regulations we needed to build one that was made out of stainless steel. So we got a stone mill that was built specifically for Cosme. Also because of the dimensions, no? Because mills can be super big. The nixtamalization was also a challenge. Getting live limestone in New York took us a while. It was the same as with the cilantro. We didn't like how it worked. The nixtamalization in Mexico City might take between 35 and 50 minutes. In New York, it's taking us like 23 minutes just of the boiling. So we've also had to adapt to the alkalinity of the water, the altitude of the city. And if you don't have the experience to see the corn, you cannot follow a recipe. So to me, one of the most important things is if you're opening a Mexican restaurant outside of Mexico is there's no recipes. You really need to adapt. You need to adapt to the setting of the city. Some of the products that we're using are also from Mexico, like the dried chiles, the beans we get from Rancho Gordo, which is a beautiful purveyor in California. He brings heirloom beans from Mexico as well. But almost everything else is from New York, because we know that we should. If you really analyze Mexican food, first of all it's regional. There's no Mexican food. No, there's regional foods of Mexico that together make up Mexican cuisine. But if you eat in Oaxaca, it's completely different than if you eat in Yucatan or if you eat in Baja California. And since it's regional, we knew if New York was part of Mexico, which I know it's not, but if it was, it would be regional. So we have to work with the local producers. And we started establishing good relationships, especially with farmers. So most of our vegetables are local. Just the milpa part is Mexican, so beans, chiles, corn is from Mexico, and the dried stuff, the things that travels well. I think sometimes chefs are a little bit too orthodox in how they approach food. No, like they would say, like I would never use something that is not Mexican. We can challenge the concept of an ingredient being Mexican. No, I think tomatoes are universal. No, like a lot of people say, like, oh, tomatoes are from Mexico. Yeah, they are from Mexico, but everybody uses them. No, like same as cilantro. Yeah, cilantro is Asian, but we ask a Mexican, and they would always say cilantro is Mexican. So I don't want to get into that conversation. I think food is always changing. If not, look at the trompo of pastor. No, that it's like a kebab with pork and pineapple and cilantro, and it's super Mexican. No, so if you can do that with tacos, then we can do almost anything else. And I also felt like it would be stupid of myself to lose the opportunity to work with ingredients that I do not have in Mexico. So you have all this beautiful fish in New York. It's one of the most important fish markets in the world. In Mexico, we get beautiful fish, but only from Mexico. There's not a lot of interest in bringing octopus from Portugal in Mexico City. It's simply not available. Whereas in New York it is, so the octopus we use is from there. most of our fish comes from all over the world. Obviously, the lobster is local. We just started doing a cod that is also local. But the snapper comes from Miami. Like I said, the octopus comes from Portugal. And so we're trying to mix and match. You can approach food by recipes. That's one of the ways that you can approach Mexican food is you go to a book, no? You see your recipe for your enchiladas and you make enchiladas. That's one way and it's fine. We like to approach food for the flavor profile. So how can you make something Mexican that is not? Just these little subtle changes in ingredients and proportions will take an Italian salsa that is meant to eat with pasta to a red Mexican salsa that is meant to eat with a quesadilla. If you see the ingredients, no, it's onions, garlic, tomato, basil, just to simplify the recipe. Same with Mexican food, it's just peppers and cilantro. So a couple of things will completely change the structure of the dish. And if you do that with most of the recipes, you can almost make anything Mexican. You can make a pot au feu Mexican into a puchero in a second. You can do basically whatever you want. You can make a French charcuterie taste like Mexican chorizo with a couple of changes. So that's one of the things we started to do. We took some ideas from Mexico, like for example, there's an aguachile, which is very Mexican, but we're doing it with wasabi. So instead of using the spice from the pepper, we use the spice from the wasabi. We're doing hamachi that is beautiful, that comes from Japan. There's a yuzu ponzu, which is a fermented, yuzu is a citrus. We're doing our own fermented citrus with limes, and we serve that like Nobu style in a crudo format. Things that also people want to eat. No, I think one of the problems with perception in Mexican food is that it's heavy, it's spicy. No, if you eat it, you're gonna dread it the next day. And yes, some of the celebration dishes are like that, but those are meant to be eaten maybe once in your lifetime. No, like mole is not meant. We don't eat mole every Friday in Mexico. Mole is for a town celebration, for a wedding, for like a big celebration. It's not even for birthdays. So we wanted to focus in the cuisine of Mexico that was more driven by vegetables and by seafood. So there is a lot of influence from those things. That's what we eat every day. So a ceviche, yeah, it's fine. You will eat that every day. No, like calabacitas with elotes. No, the zucchinis with corn. That you would eat every day. So we're doing like instead of the calabacitas, because we also open in October Cosme. So right now we've been going through most of the winter. But definitely the menu will change drastically in a few months. I'm actually really waiting for it because now for me it's a little bit difficult. For example, with the quad, we had to do like encebollado, no, which is a very Mexican thing to do, no, like livers with onions. It's very Mexican. So we do an encebollado with the cod because right now it's the winter, so we have to work with onions. No? So you also have to adapt to the weather. That is something that in Mexico we're not used to. We have basically rain and no rain season, and there's avocados year round and there's tomatoes year round. Here we've had to adapt a little bit. So that's the restaurant. The shelves are part of the service stations. We wanted to keep it very clean. It does have like a little influence by Barragan, although it was not intentional. That's the Union Square Market. I'm fortunate that I live on 10th, and then the market's on 14th, and Cosme is on 21st. So every morning I go through the market. Right now, that like I said, there's 2 or 3 things. But when I was there in the summer, it was beautiful, and I'm really looking forward to that. The menu, like I said, is based on food that is clean, easy, honest, things that you want to go back to. I think that's one also of the problems with fine dining is with fine dining sometimes you don't want to go back. We wanted Cosme to be a restaurant that you want to go back all the time. So it's a la carte. It's presented. There's no entrees, no appetizers. There's just a list of 16 dishes. You can share a family style. You can just ask one thing. You can hop in the bar and just ask for a chicharrón, a michelada, and leave. Or you can construct a very classic tasting menu-like meal. We've beverage-wise, we've focused on an agua fresca program that we love from Pujol. So there's aguas frescas being made every day. We're fermenting obviously pineapples to do tepache, but we're also making like our own other fermentation waters. We're doing a lot of the coffee is made by a company called Buna, which is also Mexican. We have a strong mezcal program, and the wine is made in Baja California by Phil Gregory, so the house wine is also Mexican. And basically that's it. It's Cosme. I don't know if you guys are gonna go to the lunch, but today the dessert we're making is from Cosme, which is the corn. Is that one? I think. Is it that one? That one. That's the one we're making today. So I hope you enjoyed it. It was a pleasure being with you for this short period of time. Thank you.